Is that sharing at the moment, people?
Okay, so
Oh,
I've
yeah.
got a copy of the agenda up as well, so I'll just look at my copy, but I've got Sederunt. I don't know what that word is, so I'll let Alistair explain what that. I don't know.
Morag being the more senior one, although after what Kevin has said, you know, he might be the one from Latin days.
Kevin's just a youth in a stripling. I suffered Latin for 5 years, right? So that's, unless anyone's got any advance on that, and note the word suffered. It is the Latin word for they sat down, right? So in other words, it's who's present.
Oh, okay.
And that's why I don't know why we still use such an old-fashioned terminology, but that's what it is.
Okay. So I think we can kind of see who's here, but have we got any apologies, Alistair? I think Paul Coya, I saw the email.
That's it.
And
Paul
Hamilton?
sent, and Shona Hamilton's a volunteer. I'm surprised actually we don't have. Who was oh hell, who was I thinking about there? Kevin Brawley. That's what I was thinking about. Kevin normally lets us know, which is it's a bit unusual. He's not messaged us yet. I'm actually just checking my emails.
And did Gordon Stevenson not apologise? I think on Facebook.
Yes. Oh, did he? Right.
I think. I need to check that, but I think I saw that he wasn't able. But
Diane, could you? I know I'm throwing you in at the deep end here, but as the new girl, as the junior, is there any possibility you could take a note of all this, so as I can deal with my buttons and my flashing things up? So basically, Gordon, Paul, what did we just say? Shona Hamilton, and then we've heard nothing at all from Conrad.
No.
And Mark hasn't been in touch either. I am actually relieved, Amy, because I mean, I think it was yesterday I was actually somewhat concerned because we hadn't heard from any, the vast majority of people, and I wasn't sure who was going to turn up, and that obviously was affecting what we were doing tonight. But the other who's Mark. And basically sent it out to all the volunteers, sort of saying, although you might not be allowed to vote, you're welcome to attend, and that hasn't worked either. So I think that's us just now. So Amy, do you want to carry on?
So yes, we'll move on to a review of the accounts.
So Morag, that's going to be you.
Alistair, you'll need to stop sharing. Thank you. Right, I have brought up the accounts for the year, and
can you boost them up a bit more?
Wait a minute, thanks. I think that's the one I want for the notes. Sorry, I brought you up the wrong one. I think.
No, you're fine. We're seeing the website.
I in that case I need to on the other. You're seeing the website, okay?
Yep.
So you want that boosted, and I think I need to do it in a control and roll. I don't think I can boost it any other way.
That's better. That's perfect now. Yeah, that's perfect.
And if you just give me a minute to get down to the notes on the other version, so that when we refer to notes, I don't need to have to keep scrolling up and down. You'll see in the very beginning of this is the standard letter that we put out, which explains, hopefully in a crystal clear manner, the relationship between Deanwood and the liquid bricks situation. And that is a statement that Hamish draws up every year for us as to where we are with that. And basically at the moment we've paid off around 345,000 of the capital costs, but it's explaining why it looks as though we've a lot of money, but we cannot at this time actually get it in cash, and that's what we refer to as the liquid bricks. I take it everybody does know what that. I mean, do you need any more, or are you all quite happy? Because I can't see your faces while I'm looking for these notes. The next bit is simply the introduction with the company numbers and the charity number, and then the contents. So I'll come down again, showing the directors as they were in 2020. And as you'll see, we've got the resignation of Jim Campbell in, and the appointments of the two Kevins in on the appropriate dates there. It also has Alistair as the secretary, the registered office, and all the official bits we need, including the bank. Most of that gets redacted when it goes up onto the Oscar website. And then the director's report, which the beginning bit is fairly standard, right? The income and expenditure account is included in the statements, what the governing document, recruitment and appointment of directors, the induction and training of directors. And this is all standard stuff that Hamish just puts in annually for us. The related parties again refers back to Deanwood and how Deanwood came about. And therefore the surplus of the year for ignoring the Deanwood is there. And then we simply say we feel the reserves are appropriate. It repeats who the directors all were. And that is signed by Alistair and Amy. The next bit is Hamish's report, which again is all very standard terminology that you get in almost all reports and accounts. And he ends up saying that nothing has come to his attention to give them any worries. And he signs that off. So the first real bit of interest is when we come to the income and expenditure account. And as you'll see, we have various notes. And the first one on that is note 2. Which points out that the general donations, and that is pretty much money that comes in just from the public, right? And that's why it's so low. And the operation of recording services contains all the things like the grants, CGS money, other funding like that. And you add the two together and you'll see that in total there was 104,000 of income from these sources. The costs of generating the funds, note 3, the £3,000 again is simply you'll see it hasn't changed since the previous year, and it is allocated to staff time, wages and salaries, voluntary income. And that is basically supposed to be the things that you do literally to get the money in. Again, it's one of these things we have to put our accounts in under a scheme called SORPS, which I honestly can't remember off the top of my head what SORPS stands for, and it's kind of required. You'll then, in note 3, it breaks down that figure of the cost directly allocated to activities with the national insurance and pensions going to staff time, magazines and papers to direct, promotion and development, office and recording, and depreciation all go to usage. Now, there it is summarised up. Later on, it's broken down. And if you want me to, I can either come back to note 3 or we can deal with it now. Which would you prefer?
I've got a question around note 3. So if it's okay, could I raise that now?
Yep.
I see we break last year's expenses into restricted and unrestricted. I can't remember which is which, which column is which. But the second column there under charitable activities, we have expended 52,000, whereas what we got in under restricted was 28,000. Are we okay with our restricted funds?
Now, I'm not at the same bit as you, Kevin. That's not on note 3, and I don't see it where we were at on the income and expenditure account. But I think, if I've understood your question correctly, the answer is always there's a carryover because the accounts run January to December. You could have restricted funds coming in which go into the next financial year or were there from the previous financial year. So there's always this bleed between what's in the cash book for the 12 months and what the accounting is, because you have to hold back on, if you get, let's say you get £50,000 in restricted for a purpose and you get it in September and it's to cover a year's post, you won't have spent it all by December. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I understand that, but it's just that there is quite a big disparity between our income of 28,000 and our expenditure under the same restriction of 52,000.
Again, I'm not seeing your figure at the page we were at, Kevin, so I'm not...
Go back to the bit that you were at on note 3. Okay.
Cost
So
of
if you see
generating funds.
Yeah. So on the next line, we've got charitable activities, also covered by note 3, 52,393. Okay. So we've spent that, whereas our income under that same one was only 28,000.
Well, again, that can be because we had money that we got in last year that we're only spending this year.
Okay.
Right? And that's to say, there's quite a lot of that. I always have terrible problems with Hamish when I look at things and they don't bear any relation to what I've got in the 12-month cash book. And then he religiously explains it all to me as to why he's put things where they are.
No, that's fine. I mean, I'm quite certain you've been questioning that as well. But as long as the process around accruals or cash basis is fine with Hamish, and you're okay with it, Maura, I'm fine with that as well. So thank you for your patience with me.
And on the actual note 3, as I said to you, that we'd said about all the things that were directly related to activities, support costs are also allocated to activities. And again, if you want the exact figures, I can go through note 3 with you, I can actually pull it up. But if not, support costs you've got for usage, accountants' fees and depreciation. And for direct, you've got postages, rent and rates, telephone, heat and light, repairs and maintenance, bank charges and general. Right, so that then is what makes up the figure, the cost of the generation, the government's cost and the total resources expended. Unfortunately, because of the way it works, you'll then see it suddenly shoots up on the page that you can see to the total funds brought forward.
You've not spotted my hand up. Basically, the note for the any question, Kevin, like that. Can I suggest that you send it through to me and I'll forward the question on to Hamish? Because yes, that is one that I actually would quite like a bit more clarity on. Morag is probably right about the difference between the 2 years, but if you can jot down your question and email it through to me, I'll forward it on to Hamish, or you can forward it straight to Hamish if you've got Hamish's email address, and we'll get an actual answer. Okay.
And the reason then, still on the total funds carried forward, you'll see that has gone back up into the 300s. That is because of the notional what Dean Wood owes Q and review, which again, I don't like, but Hamish tells me under SORPS, that's the only way it can be done.
Yeah.
Okay, so we then move on to the balance sheet, and that takes me to here to note 8. For any questions, the tangible fixed assets. It starts with the leasehold improvements at January 2020, fixtures and fittings, recording and computer equipment, and that comes to a total of 133,000. Depreciation, which again, he explains the rates of depreciation in a note, brings that it effectively gets written off, so the net book value is £276. Again, I confess that although I have had to go along with this, I keep saying, but how can it be when you've still got all these things and it says you simply revalue them in the following years? Again, if anyone would like to get an answer out of Hamish in black and white, nobody would be happier than me. But I'm not sure where it is, but somewhere there is saying how they depreciate. I think as it was the beginning, the rate at which you depreciate things. And if it's 25%, it means if you buy something today in 4 years' time, it technically has no value. But you're still going on using it. and it's still perfectly functional. That is where I am not an accounting person. I can do bookkeeping. Right. The next bit simply says we do not have to be audited, but we have to meet the Companies Act, a true and fair view of the state of affairs of the company at 2020. And that is what, with the information that we submitted to Hamish, the meetings we had with Hamish, and Hamish make it fit the system, is what, that is a true and fair record of where we are in the complications of how it has to be laid out. I've only got to page 8, so I now need to go to page 9. Which again is, I'm sorry, I seem to have a thing come up I can't get rid of, the net movement in funds. Which again, you'll see the increase in debtors, that is all to do with where money comes in, and decrease in creditors. Again, I don't know why that is required. But every time we ask the question, we're told this is sorts, you've got to put it in. And the net move, you're adding back in depreciation. I just don't get it. But if anyone again knows more than me or can.
Yeah, it tends to be more like a measure or an indicator as to liquidity. So if these things are going up or down, it tells us, actually how close are we to being insolvent or whatever, and we're not. We're in a healthy place. So I can look at that and say, yeah, we're good. So that's why. Yeah.
I think that's what I could tell you too, is we're good. But as to all the ins and outs to exactly why figures are where they are, I would not be absolutely convinced I could answer. That then explains how it has been calculated, all about the sorts and all these things. Now, this is all from the website, so if anyone wants to check them up, they can. Sorry, this keeps sliding the way I don't want it to go. All incoming resources. Right. And there you are, expenditures recognised and accruals as the liability is incurred.
More. See if you take your slider on the far right-hand side up.
That one there.
Yeah, take it up.
That's better. No, it's just come back again the minute I move it.
No, keep going up. Up the way.
That's as far up as it will go.
No, you'll be able to take it further.
No.
Oh, right, you've gone too far now. Right, sorry. Right.
And that's I'm trying to come down the pages as we're going.
It's the other slider. There's another slider on the right-hand side.
The minute I hit that other thing appears. Sorry. There's the bit I was talking about lease holding, but I think I've now come too far down too quickly. Nope, that's where we were. And there's your depreciation, how they do it. And this estimated useful life, and I have argued black was white when with the fast copiers that he wrote them off over originally 25% per annum when we had them for 20 years. So I couldn't get that one at all. And that again is simply where the things are going for what they're meant to be, is what that says. If it's restricted, it's identified to the fund. And that's why the general donations look so low, because it has not got anything that. And that's your one that I was saying about what was allocated to which activities. And you'll see he's got voluntary, charitable and governance on both sides. The hire of the leasehold property is the notional £12,000 rent we pay to Deanwood in exchange for their notional £12,000 management fee. And there's what your staff salaries, staff costs consist of. And it shows you the total wages and salaries, social security and pension costs. And over the year, there was 4 people, there was 5 in 2019. And what Alistair and I received, because that has to be stated because we are executive directors, trustees. And it states clearly that that is allowed. And that we're exempt from corporation tax. And then you've got your tangible fixed assets, and you'll see there were no additions over the year. The depreciation charge is minimal, so the net book value is the thing that you calculated before. It repeats again about us owning the 2 shares in Deanwood, which is 100% of the ordinary share capital. And that what Deanwood's all about. This bit here about the debtors, that is the mainly the 292,984 is the Deanwood, what it's paid off liquid bricks again. And again, it states there that we can't have it in cash, which helps with funding. Other creditors I would need to look at, but obviously it is at that point who owed us money, which probably, again, because of apportioning back and forward. You know, for example, CJS, we would pay them in December, but we won't see that money till 2021's account. So there's that kind of backing and forwarding he allocates. And that then shows what Deanwood was owes us at that point. This was something we got them to add in this year, which we found very helpful. The unrestricted funds. And that shows you then what came in and out. And then the restricted funds. Now, again, the Community Jobs Fund, he tells me it's got to go back over the years of the fund, which I don't understand why, but he simply says it has to be. Because as you see, we only got 6,666 in, and we only put out 7,270. The voluntary sector support fund's an example, I think, Kevin, of what you were talking about, because at the end of the year, we still had that in our money that would be spent in January, February and March of this year. And the other ones, as you see, sorry, I can't get rid of this thing at all. Show what the amounts were and whether it's all been spent or not spent. Okay. And that 12,000 again is the rental fee that Q Review, in inverted commas, pays to Deanwood. And in the Deanwood accounts, there's a management fee, which in inverted commas, Deanwood pays to Q Review. And that's all that's there. There is one further page that we do not send out to everybody, but it does break down rather better exactly what was spent on things like electricity and accounting fee. It breaks certain things down rather more. So again, if anyone did want it, we could send that sheet to them, but it is tied up. The accounts that you're not approving but noting are as these are what exactly as is there. What's going to be submitted to Companies House has been submitted, sorry, to Companies House and to Oscar. So have you any other questions, or can I stop sharing?
I don't see anyone with their hand up. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think everyone seems to be okay to move on.
Right.
Yeah, thanks, Maureen. That was very helpful indeed.
The extra page, if anyone wants it, again, just email me because it's on an Excel version of this, and I can simply send through the sheet. But it's not terribly informative. It is like how much we didn't spend on newspapers because we weren't buying any because of lockdown. Now, there's two things that go with that. One is the appointment of auditors, which is on the agenda. And the other one, I don't know if this is the place for it or if it's probably better the way forward, is what we're doing about directors for finance, signatories, etc. I'll take your advice. Do you want to raise it now or do you want to keep it to the way forward?
Okay, I think. Sorry.
Sorry, Amy. It was basically the appointment of the auditors was basically about Hamish, but it was also more like we were going to raise the fact that about the timing of the accounts. I find it very irritating that we're discussing the 2020 accounts in October 2021. So basically, Amy, if what I would be suggesting under the appointment of the auditors is that we need to say to Hamish that as every year we send the figures through to him in January, we really do need the accounts ready by April. So yes, he doesn't submit them to Companies House until September, but we would much prefer that they were on Oscar by June at the latest, and therefore we would be having an AGM for 2021 at the latest June 2022. I see Amy Kevin's got his hand up.
Kevin, yeah.
Yeah, does Oscar, sorry, question for Alistair or potentially Morag, does Oscar have specific expectations around when we file?
Must be done by the 30th of September. It's not Oscar that is the problem, though. Grant funders are used to, from other charities, getting at least an annual report with where they've approved the balance sheet and income and expenditure within a couple of months.
Yeah.
And they expect to get the signed accounts. I mean, the one that we did recently, when we said they weren't quite ready because the deadline was there, they asked could we give them an update on figures.
Yeah.
Which we could, but they weren't signed off because they weren't being signed off. It was sort of like 3 days before, after their deadline, where we could.
Yeah. What I'm trying to do is understand some of the practicalities around this, because we have Hamish, who is a long-standing, not quite auditor, but nearly there. We've got a year end, which is the 31st of December. Accountants tend to be really, really busy in January because of income tax stuff. They tend to be really, really busy then for a couple of months because of the 31st of December year ends, and then they tend to be really, really busy because of the 31st of March year ends there. So what we need to do is acknowledge that level of busyness, but nonetheless make the request to bring things forward. The concern that I would have is that we're kind of expecting to approve things as a team of directors very, very close to the filing date, and that we actually need a clearer runway at the end just in case something arises. And we've got conscientious people working on this. I do appreciate it, but sometimes people miss things, or part of our role as directors is to conscientiously just take a look at it and make sure that it's sensible. Be another pair of eyes for our colleagues who have more direct involvement, like yourself, Morag, and Alistair, and so it's basically, I think the conversation would be along the lines of, Hamish, I think we appreciate that you get busy at the beginning of the year here. However, we really do need, particularly following a request from those awkward directors, we do need to bring this forward so that we've got enough time to give it the scrutiny that it deserves, bearing in mind their voluntary roles. And I'm quite happy to put that down in a note as well, if it helps anybody.
This year there was rather more toing and froing even than previous years, because there was this question of COVID related, and usually what happens is we send it, and then after about 3 months he sends it back as a draft, and there are always questions, and we have a meeting over the questions, and he goes away and we give him the annual report, and that's it. But this year there was a requirement for at least one more meeting, and that hasn't helped either in terms of the slippage.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why we just need to ask: can we get started sooner? Sooner we get started, sooner we get finished, and so on. But it'll be a very polite conversation, won't it? It's just where we have concerns, we need to raise them.
My little icon there was applauding what you were saying there, Kevin. So I'll do it again. There we go. You're getting a golden applaud there. and it clicks off itself, people, which Kevin will now.
I do appreciate that.
He's going to be getting a very sore hand in a minute because he's got his arm up still. Do you want to take yourself off, sir? Morag will be along with her feather duster to tickle you, in God style.
I wouldn't know where her feather duster is. I don't do any housework.
Basically, so if everybody's agreed, then Amy, then you know, if we ask, can we get you to kind of do the dirty work? If Morag and I sort of suggest that basically if we can blame the board, which in recent days Diane will tell you have been doing quite a bit of. So
I'll have to
it's
say,
the board's fault.
I need to put an email so I can report it to the board without any hassle. It's my standard thing when people say they can't email me stuff. Disney works in your press quarter, but for most other things it's fine. But yeah, that would be very sensible. Says that, you know, because we now have a stronger board who are taking much more of an interest, we need a bit more of a time so as we're all clear what we're doing.
Yeah, I'll get the text from the Firefly and use your words, Kevin, if that's okay, and I'll come up with the email.
Amy, I'll draft up a probably slightly more eloquent wording which can be used.
I will happily take your words. Okay, all right. Okay, thank you.
We will draft. And that way, if we get organised tomorrow, we can put it in a task so as we know that if you haven't done it by a bit, we can nag you.
Yeah, it might not happen before the weekend, but it'll
I mean, that's no, as long as we have a note, because the other thing that does sometimes happen, not this year, but in previous years, is we have, because he took so long, started to draft an annual report and not quite finished it. And it's only says, but I need your annual report. And but then it's harder to remember when you go back to look at it.
Yeah.
Well, Amy, that actually, what Morag's statement there leads quite nicely on to the next thing, if you want to.
Yeah. So so the next thing is the Community Recovery Fund Alexa project.
Oh no, it was the bit I was telling you earlier that I added in that I finally got it to work. But basically, it's I'll bring it up and I'll show you. Basically, hopefully this is now going to work. There we go. Morag, I actually pinched the letter that you did to Suter.
How dare you?
I know. Because basically it's kind of putting that Suter letter on to as the basis of the 2021 annual report in many ways, and also discovering that Diane, I've had similar problems to you in the last few days trying to get stuff to work online. But I got it to work earlier this evening, so I'm just going to run through that if that's okay. What Morag highlighted in a letter to Suter was that during lockdown, home recording has enabled readers as far away as London and Aberdeen to contribute to our titles. We continue to provide a daily service for our 3 main titles and our weekly magazine throughout the year, and expanded the number of articles and the formats available. Thanks to support from the National Lottery Awards for all COVID-19 funding, we were able to employ a producer trainer for 16 hours per week from May to July 2020 to offer online support to volunteers and to supply 3 home readers with laptops to improve their recordings. We have improved the number of reading impaired people accessing our service to around, and guess what? That figure hasn't now appeared. That's the joy of it. It turns out that PowerPoint summarises things, which is not, so that it will be in the letter. We'll need to double check that. There we go. The number accessing by phone or tablet shows the biggest growth. We also offer daily service through BWBF server and our website, as well as a weekly Castbox podcast. In January, we secured funding from the Community's Recovery Fund to work with them to develop an Alexa skill. This will enable listeners in care homes to access information without waiting on a carer to assist them, relieving pressure on carers at this difficult time, as well as increasing the independence of the listener. We continue to conduct our Q Talks, giving our ambassadors a range of interesting information to share. In January, we sent 150 ambassadors, social work departments, etc. a back to work card, thanking them for their support and in promoting us and reminding them that we were still very active. I think that's also the point where Morgan and I would probably like to thank Moira Langston's cousin, our artist in residence, so to speak, who very kindly created Wee Aggie, who was our volunteer who initially was pictured with her cats trying to record, and then in the back to work card she had her laptop and the cats trying to start recording again when she went back to recording. So Moira very kindly let us use that, Moira's cousin very kindly let us use that image. The use of YouTube and Zoom has leveled the opportunity for visually impaired people to take part in discussions, as they do not have to travel to a venue like we are doing this evening. Feedback from our team indicated that they were struggling to cope with the restrictions of the pandemic, but wished to keep promoting and recording our vital service. With support from the Scottish Government Wellbeing Fund, we ran a series of sessions on wellbeing and autism awareness through Lego. I think, Amy, do you want to comment on the Lego sessions? Or Karen?
I did partake in the Lego and introduced my husband to Lego for the first time. So it was good fun.
I can still see Karen going, is it this shape? Just as the screen wobbled, so you hadn't a clue if it was this shape or not.
Yeah, it turns out that blocks of plastic are not a universal language after all. Who knew?
I must admit that I'm surprised you two ladies aren't saying anything about you being robbed of the prize. There was a £50 Lego prize as well.
I mean, to be fair, I definitely wasn't robbed. I mean, it was definitely going to be either our Amy or the other Amy that won it. So I was quite happy.
I think my handicap was my husband, who it was his first time using it. So that's what I'm going to say my handicap was.
Please do not edit that sentence in any fashion. Right?
That and having a black rock when you put all the spares and you were trying to find black shapes, that didn't help either. Yeah.
It was very good for the well-being.
So basically, for anyone who is not aware of what we're talking about, you can actually still see the videos on YouTube. So I would put them up there on our well-being information section. The difference we make to people is one of our proudest achievements, and we attach a case study of Gordon, which shows how time, support, respect and encouragement can make a difference to our volunteers, as well as providing information to our reading impaired listeners. We have strengthened our relationship with RNIB Connect, Eastern Branch. Now, RNIB Connect is the 900 plus visually impaired people who take part in a Facebook group run by the RNIB. Eastern Branch of Voluntary Action, Visibility, Triple Tap Tech, Talking News Federation and Eastern Branch of Visual Impairment Forum, all of whom are more aware of what we offer and more willing to promote our service. Off the record, at this point, I'm not going to say anything about Opal. Ronnie Whiteside.
And their assets, Matt?
Aye.
Yeah, this would have fitting very nicely right at this part, so I was keeping a low profile there, waiting on it.
At least you didn't have 3 hours talking to an idiot over this one. We simply say, Ronnie, will you put us on? And he will.
Yes, you're definitely going on. Aye, I'll start moaning later about what I've been up to, but it's exciting one way or another, I suppose.
The asset map, Ronnie, do you want to actually say what that is? Now might be a good opportunity.
Aye, so I think well before my time at my current organisation, there was an interactive map that had a list of, so that was almost a sales pitch, a list of resources, places, things to basically improve health and well-being. So basically you could argue anything that's worth sharing that you enjoy or your neighbour, your friend, family member enjoys. It's uploaded to this interactive map. You click the wee asset, it tells you a bit more about it. There's a search bar and stuff. You could type in mental health, that would jump up, or the kind of local mental health services. So this was a thing before my time. It kind of grew obsolete. I don't think it was given as much attention as it should. We kind of became in charge of it some weird way. How we ended up developing the new website. It launched officially on Monday. It's basically just been my problem to deal with. It's a great problem though. I'm quite proud of it. But
well, you've done better than the guy before.
Aye, well, it's still going. So that's 3 days. 2 days. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself there. So 2 days, but I think there's about maybe 90 assets on it. But I've been working on reviewing them as opposed to submitting them myself. But aye, it's the place to put Q and review. It's a place to put Q and review and different activities that's happening, like Lego night that I've just heard about. Things like that could feature well. And basically, it's just a place to put everything so people can inform their own health and well-being.
And the other one, Ronnie, on that one was Opal, the phone number itself. I haven't tested it. I was threatening to get somebody to get my secret squirrel to phone it to find out what folks said about Q and review that way. But you've also got the Opal phone line.
Aye, so that's another thing I've severely inherited in recent times. So basically, the organisation I work for, 3 people, big personalities and organisations left, so it's been left to everybody else. So if you phoned Opal, I'm sure somebody would put you on to me if it was Q and review. So that would be my bag. Well, I hope so. So I would please if phone Opal if you get any questions and quality test it. But I'll probably make its way to me, and then I'll just pretend I don't know who Q and review are.
That organisation.
Aye.
We don't know then.
Somebody will ask me about Eastern Barnshire Radio next, and then what do I say there? You know, so.
Oh, we don't talk about that.
Aye. So jokes aside, aye.
No,
aye.
I think basically the reason I bring that up is that there's lots going on in the area that people don't know about, and that's sighted people. And I think there's very much an issue about visual people who are there for the 4,500 people living with sight loss in Eastern Bartonshire, who therefore won't know, never mind the rest of Scotland, won't know about these sorts of things, and we kind of need to be pushing that. But to go back to the Suitor, we also met online with the Eastern Bartonshire Older Persons Network, which includes representatives from a range of organisations. We have successfully strengthened now the Eastern Bartonshire People's Network. I've been trying to attend that where they've taken place. Hasn't gone down particularly well when I've again brought up things like, and again a wee bit of a training session tonight for you all. One of the presenters from the fire brigade at the meeting, knowing that there were a number of visually impaired people in attendance, said, well, as you can see behind me, this is the organisation I work for, and left it at that.
Oh dear. Kind of leave out the broadcasters' books and radio and television.
Well, our good friend Sandy Taylor, who's the chairman of the local visual impairment forum, he actually didn't say anything. So it was Muggins who had to actually do it as usual, open my big mouth and sort of say, "Hoy, wait a minute here," which did not go down particularly well. But it is things like that. I mean, tonight there's at least 2 of us here who are visually impaired tonight, but our visual impairments aren't that bad compared to the likes of Sandy, etc. But there's also always this assumption you shouldn't just explain things and tell people what's on, and that's part of the reason I'm reading through the slides, and I asked Morag to read through the account sort of thing. We have successfully strengthened our board, and later on there is a discussion going to take place on that as well, further discussion on that. We're confident that these improvements and the fact that we have 100% occupancy now at the time of writing will enable the charity to own the building outright within the next 3 years. I need to get back onto that one. There we go. An ambassador home reader wishes to extend her commitment as a volunteer social impact analyst assistant so that we can target potential listeners more effectively. Now that volunteer is with us this evening. And as yet, bearing in mind what I just said about visual impairment and introducing things, introducing people and what you're talking about, Diane, this is probably a good moment for you to introduce yourself to those who maybe haven't seen you before. Okay.
Hi, I'm Diane. I'm going to be Morag from the end of this year.
Wouldn't wish that to anyone.
Big shoes to fill, I must admit. And I will do my best. Whether or not that's going to be enough, I'm hoping it's going to be enough. And I'm working hard to learn as much as I can before she goes, so that I can carry on the good work.
So Diane, just as a sort of, basically, I don't think Ronnie in particular hasn't really met you yet. But and Karen briefly met you the other day, and we now suspect that Matt thought that it was Morag that was with you. I'm going to get slapped for that. If she disappears off that screen,
dear.
somebody shout at me, because she'll probably be on the way up here to hit me. I'm dead beat. I know what she's saying, right? But basically, Diane, what's your past? I mean, you were the person who was going to be interested in social impact and analysis.
Yeah, Dan, I know. I knew I was going to
past
ask that myself. I was generally, I know this isn't the time or place, but I'm generally interested because that introductory paragraph Alistair dropped in about you, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to ask all about this. So,
I started off. Well, I left school at 16 with then it was O levels and CSEs, and I went into banking, and I was in banking for 20 years. I took redundancy from there and changed career to be a fitness instructor for 5 years, and that's when I got involved in holistic therapies, massage, NLP, a little bit of counselling, but not a lot. And then I needed to change again for various reasons. So I went into the police. So I was in the Met Police for nearly 14 years. And I was lucky enough to be in a position to take retirement when I reached a grand old age. And I moved up here 2 years ago. So.
And what was the position that you retired from in the police, Diane?
What was the what? Sorry.
What was the position that you retired from in the police?
I was a detective constable, and I worked at the time in the fraud department, the cybercrime.
So be warned, the rest of you.
that went exactly how I hoped it would go, Dan. Thank you very much.
You'll notice Ronnie's now going to be very quiet for a bit.
Deleting history, browser history.
Yeah. Alternatively, you might think that I know all the tricks, so you know.
She knows how not to get caught, you know.
Basically, Ronnie, this is again why I think when we were talking to, it was the head of learning for Eastern Berkshire Council we were having a discussion with the other day, and when we were sort of going through who's involved, they were extremely impressed. And I think that's one of the other reasons, Diane, that going forward, a lot of our meetings will probably remain in this format, because we wouldn't have Amy joining us from Aberdeen, we wouldn't have Kevin, and I'm not actually sure because we're in a different room tonight, people. We're normally in the conservatory. Are you in Ireland, Kevin? You're on mute.
No, I'm back. I've just changed my arrangement. My son has moved out, so I have taken back my office. So if there's a drum kit in the background, it's because this was a music studio up until a few weeks ago.
Basically, I mean, Kevin's in Linlithgow. So we've got all these people from all earths and parts, and I think that's one of the strengths now. So Ronnie, you're not allowed to poach any of my lovely colleagues for your I mean, we gave you away to Curtis, but we're not giving any of the rest of the team away for the moment anyway. Are we clear on that, Mr. Whiteside?
Aye, all right, I suppose. Agreed.
Remember, this has been recorded, Ronnie. You can't go back.
Dan will be editing this anyway. She'll be making me say things that I didn't.
So basically, that's one of the things that we've been really quite chuffed about in the last year. We expect to have a blended approach for most of the year, with about half of our reader ambassadors contemplating studio recording. And in fact, Diane's going to do a wee presentation shortly about that. Our ambassadors who visited public places and leafleted will. Oops, I've lost the screen. Our ambassadors who visited public places and leafleted will also have a mix of views on, for example, sharing cars to take banners to a venue. This year, thanks to TNLCF funding, we are now uniquely placed to assist Talking Newspaper Services to reopen, as we've built up a library of training resources and have built partnerships with the British Wireless for the Blind Fund and Erskine Care Homes to develop our Alexa skill. And that was basically where we're at practically up till now. So again, going forward, the annual report for 2021 is kind of almost written. We've just got another couple of months to go and we'll cover that. So that's me finished.
Some of that is actually 2020 that we will need to be careful
No,
sites,
it is stuff that was started in 2020 that moved into 2021.
right.
Is why I was doing that. So basically, that's my bit finished on that one, Amy. I'm now trying to find where I'm supposed to be. Go for it, Amy.
Okay. So let me find my notes. So we've kind of talked about that. I think possibly going on to the Community Recovery Fund Alexa project progress. I think we got an email earlier, which I can try and bring up, unless you have anything more than what was in the email that was sent earlier.
Amy.
Sorry, my email's closed. Well, I'm just loading it up again. I think we got an update on the Alexa project.
Right. No, I'm afraid.
Have you got more? Oh, is that? Oh, is it another presentation? Okay, yeah, that's fine. Yep.
Now let me just bring that up and share it. Here we go. That says it should be there now. Hopefully this has worked. I had some problems earlier with it. The grant, as we all know, was £57,182. What we delivered was 3,000 people supported through the grant. The main difference made by the Community Recovery Grant, the Alexa project, was that the original intention of the grant was that we would work with the British Wireless for the Blind Fund to create a skill using the 4 talking newspaper titles that Q Review Recording Service produce. Initially, this was the programming that was undertaken. It then, however, became obvious this was more complicated than actually taking the 29 Scottish talking newspaper titles listed on the BWBF telephone app and enabling them to be part of the skill. This then led to us widening the programming to include all 250 talking newspapers across the UK. In making this switch, we were quickly able to increase the listenership, who, as well as wanting to listen to Q Review Herald, were also as keen to hear from Playback's Daily Record. We realised that by making this switch, many more visually impaired people would want to assess the skill and to take part in the testing, despite the skill having only been put out for testing during April and having gone live in May. We are delighted that so far, and this is the email that Amy's referring to, Dave Beard has confirmed yesterday that 924 individual users creating 14,523 sessions have used the skill. And this is the figure from those accessing all the talking newspapers on the service. For the other parts of the service, for Q Review titles alone, on the web player, Sonata Bumblebee and TN app, there was 478 individuals listening to 6,230 individual tracks of audio using BWBF devices alone. That therefore doesn't take account of Castbox, Anchor, and the USB sticks side of things. Feedback from some of those who used the skill included Brian West, who's an old friend from the Talking Newspaper network. He used to be with Lothian and is now primarily with Playback. As you see there, he basically had used a 3rd generation Alexa Dot. He then gave quite a technical reading on the issues, and this was in the early stages of the skill. One of the things that came out of that for Brian was simply that you had to be terribly precise in how you worded things, and that I actually find is still the case. And I think that's one of the reasons why, if Kevin Brawley was here tonight, I think Kevin Morrig and I and Andrew had quite an exasperating time, particularly around about April, May-ish, during which we sort of the testing process. Morrig, do you want to say something about that? How it took quite a while to get things.
Yeah,
to work.
They launched it with great publicity when it didn't work, right? And then we had to go through it all again, and Amazon itself was very difficult because there was a series of things that had to be approved by them. And one lot said, no, you can't do that. You need to change it and do this. So they did, and I'm deliberately not specifying because it was the techie guys were doing it. So Dave and Andrew did exactly what they said and put it to Amazon again, and it was two different people that were assessing it, and they said, no, that's not acceptable. We still have problems with the fact that, was it talking newspaper singular, talking newspaper plural? Somebody wanted talking newspaper info. And all of this was, people had their own wee agendas, and it was very, very difficult to try and get it that it was easy for the end user that didn't know anything other than they wanted to listen to a newspaper, what they needed to say. And I see we're still having glitches, just the same as they had with the speech radio. They've got the same kind of glitches. I know that some of the talking newspapers are very concerned because, like us, their name is not, I mean, the Falkirk Herald's easily. That is the name of the paper. But the talking newspaper is Forth Valley Newsline. Right? Others, Strathkelvin is the Kirkintilloch Herald.
Yeah.
So I, as the visually impaired people, want to listen to the Falkirk Herald. Actually, I don't, not just anyone else, but you want to listen to Falkirk Herald. You would think you could say, Alexa, play Falkirk Herald. It's not necessarily that easy. They are working it out, and I believe in that email he also said there would be some changes to commands. You know, that I think it will, but it is frustrating for people. And I think will continue to be, but then I find Alexa, I would have her flung out the windows. I mean, I'm sorry, that's, you know, so I can understand why people will find it frustrating, but people that want to will persevere. And once you've found it, it's easy to go back to.
I think from the other perspective as well, you know, when Gordon has actually reported today that, or yesterday, that they are thinking of cancelling their Alexa radio show when it runs out next March because it's too costly for the number of people using it. And I think that's why we have been fortunate in the way, if Kevin Brawley was here tonight, I mean, Kevin put quite a bit into sort of trying to negotiate with BWBF, and it did work out for the best. But I think the other side to it is, as you see here, likes of the SNP MSP Gordon MacDonald and Paul Sweeney, the member for Glasgow region, both of them highlighting that it's a brilliant opportunity, it's a great way forward, it should lead to great things. But it's kind of like, for me, it's kind of like Teams. Tonight, we started this meeting off with playing with the gallery. But one of the things right now is that it seems to be that Ian, for example, one day he'll have something new, then I won't have something new in Teams. I gather there's similar problems with Windows 11, and that, you know, people downloading that and finding it's just not working. Diane and I currently are having problems when we're trying to shift Word documents online and using stuff in folders online. And again, we've having to have meetings tomorrow. But so I think when you compare what we've achieved in that short period of time working with BWBF, I am really chuffed. I think it has made a major difference, and the publicity that we've had from that has made a major difference. So, you know, as Gordon MacDonald said in his, I'm thrilled that Q Review have managed to launch the Alexa skill talking newspaper, and I would like to extend a huge congratulations to everyone who has been involved in this success. I would also encourage anyone who would like to support this extremely worthwhile initiative to volunteer with Q Review, and you can help from your own home. I understand that the service is heavily reliant on volunteers, so every bit of help will be very much appreciated. And I think, again, one of the things that we should be particularly proud of in 2021 is that the number of people who have continued to read from home. Ian in particular, I mean, Ian, could you, am I right, we're sort of hovering around about the sort of 15 to 18 people a month are still involved in reading. Is that right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I don't have a head count, but it's about a dozen, I think, yeah.
A dozen, yeah, who are still reading every month and who are still contributing. So I think that's something that we should be very proud about. And the fact that 2 or 3 years back we took all the sort of training things online, we've kept that going. The volunteers themselves have kept that going. That's something that we should be singing the praises of, and that's why it's unfortunate that not more of them are here tonight. And that's something that we do need to address. How are we going to make sure that those volunteers are happy going forward? Again, the future plan side of this, BWBF are currently working on a beta skill as the area name or newspaper name function and are almost at the end of this testing. So any current instructions will quickly be replaced by an updated skill very shortly. As soon as this new skill is live, full instructions and the bullet point alternative will be released, and it is our hope that our patron Paul Coya will video the setting up and command procedure for us, hopefully to take forward and to raise awareness by it being Paul doing it. When we did the volunteer stories thing earlier this year, again, that went down extremely well. Bill Marwick and in fact Diane was also one of the people who did that. We had a whole series of volunteers doing these stories, and the numbers of people who interacted with those videos were very high. But obviously we obviously in the blind in our sort of sector, Paul's age range and Paul's history, we got a lot of people responding to Paul doing that video. So again, I'm very grateful that Paul was willing to do that. Going forward, what we're talking about is an Alexa development officer. Community Review Recording Service will extend our successful project funded by the Community Recovery Fund in January to June 2021, which saw us together with British Wireless Fund for the Blind develop access to talking newspapers via Alexa devices within Erskine Veterans Care Homes. Through the employment of an Alexa development officer, we will place 40 Alexa devices in Sight Scotland Veteran Homes, which is another charity in West Lothian and Renfrewshire, and Erskine Care Homes in Glasgow and Edinburgh, so that residents can access talking newspaper services online. We will employ a part-time officer for 12 months to introduce the Alexa skill into care homes, liaise with listeners and staff to gather feedback, and work with the British Wireless for the Blind Fund to implement changes and updates to the skill. The officer will establish a volunteer virtual technical support team who will then be on hand to provide technical support via our virtual telephone system. And again, we're waiting to hear from various trust funds about whether that type of post is being funded, but it is one of the things that we want to move on and to move further forward on. We will employ a part-time officer for 12 months to introduce the Alexa skill into care homes, liaise with listeners and staff to gather feedback, and work with the British Wireless for the Blind Fund to implement changes and updates to the skills. What difference will this potential project make? The care home residents activate Alexa by verbal commands, allowing visually impaired or care-dependent listener independence to make their own choice. Listeners feel a sense of connection to local issues and information and are mentally stimulated by the content delivered. And it's that local issue thing that is also important in the next project we'll talk about. Content will vary as more talking newspapers make decisions about their future. And basically that was the end of the one about the Community Recovery Fund. Amy, if you want to take over. Okay, Amy.
There, I'm sorry. I just kept unmuting me anyway. So we're now looking at the return to the studios. Is that something that you want to pick up on, Alistair, or?
No, that's Diane. If you want to.
Diane, sorry. Yeah.
Beg your pardon. I'd be there.
This is your presentation, Diane.
Yeah. Okay, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Lovely, because you've all disappeared off of my screen, so I can't see anyone. Okay. Right, so Q Review Print Speaking to the Blind Home Reader Survey, September 2021. I spoke to 14 of our home readers in September and asked them about their experience during the last 18 months of home reading and how it had worked for them. You might have seen on Facebook a few weeks ago, actually now I think, I put a summary of the main points on there that came out of the survey, but this is going to be a more detailed look at their responses. And this is what we're going to use to inform our way forward, because without our volunteers, we wouldn't have much to do. So we need them. So the first question I asked was, after the during the 18 months that you recorded at home, what worked well? The number one response was record.
Diane, sorry to interrupt, but all we're seeing is that first title page.
Oh,
You haven't gone into any other slides.
it's showing both on mine.
No,
What
I've
worked
got
Okay,
the
one with the cat now. Yep, that was it.
Yeah, you be the
Yeah.
cat.
Yeah.
Excellent.
What worked
Yes.
well, the cat.
Yeah, what worked well? Recording at home worked well for the majority of people. You might think that they couldn't really have recorded anywhere else, but recording at home and recording at a time to suit me was the response that came out from most of our readers. The other responses was having someone to sort out my recordings. That's a nod to our studio producer, who we know is extremely busy supporting all of our home readers, so organising them, advising them, giving them a bit of information on how to improve their recordings. So we need to keep that going as well. The home reading software, some people say, is better to use. And people like the idea that they could do extra reading, or they could just do the reading themselves. We're going to get different types of opinion, obviously, because you're not going to get everybody thinking the same, but it's worth knowing what everybody thinks. So the next slide is what didn't work so well. The common answer to that one was people took on too much reading. The people that said that have sorted it out since then, and those who are still thinking that they're taking on too much reading, I reminded that Ian actually emails our readers every week saying, if you want to change what you read, how often you read, if you want to take a break, just let us know. So hopefully, if people aren't very happy, they know that they can contact us and tell us that they want to do something else. Other end of the spectrum, what didn't work well, everything worked fine. You know, some people didn't have any complaints at all about reading from home. Other responses was new technology that didn't work so well for some people. They just didn't like learning something new. Sound quality, that came out as quite a frequent response. People can't control the extraneous noise at home like you could do in the studios. And some people missed physical interaction, which is natural. That's been a feature of excuse me, that's been a feature of lockdown, so that's no surprise. I asked them what did they miss about going to the studios, and no surprise, main response was social interaction, closely followed by going out with a purpose. And that was more our older readers who were retired and used to enjoy coming to the studio, having something to do, having a coffee and a chat and a biscuit, and then getting on with their reading. Some people, there you see, some people don't miss anything about going to the studios. Again, you get extremes of opinion. Some of our readers have joined us actually during lockdown, and they've never actually been to our studios. And one other comment that came out was somebody missed the good quality technology. So while home reading is definitely a preference for the majority of our readers, some people are actually missing the quality tech that we've got at the studios. So I put the question to them, if we only record from the studios and don't have a home reading option anymore, what would that do for your volunteering with us? And as you can see there, the top two responses was I would stop volunteering and I would do less volunteering. And that would have a critical impact on the amount of content that we could put out. That's, to be fair, that might be because of the distance people have to travel to the studio, the frequency of people volunteering. At the moment, they might feel they can read 3 or 4 times a week. If they had to come to the studios, it might be once, maybe twice a week. So that's understandable that if people had to come out of doors in their own time, levels of volunteering might drop. But it's clear that from that if we don't offer home reading as an option, then we will have a critical impact. Some people are able to do the same volunteering, so that's good news for us. Some people would prefer the studio, but one of the comments, and it will come out a little bit later as well, is I would only go to the studio if it was safe. That's about coronavirus, and that's no surprise. 76% of respondents expressed a preference for recording from home in the future. So again, that just confirms that if we're going to take our volunteer base with us, then we need home recording as an option. We need the support in place to answer their queries, to organise them, to keep them going, keep them reading for us. So we need to consider home reading as an option, but also what are we going to do with that studio space? Because that's there, that's what we have. How can we utilise that better? Can we explore different ways of using it? Can we actually invite people into the studio to record on a booking system to get less people in the space at one time? All of these things are options that we need to review. Now, there wasn't a specific question about the technology during the survey, but some of the comments came up fairly often, so I thought I'd reproduce them here. The majority of people prefer using their phone, their iPad or their PC to record on. Closely followed by people saying that Audacity and Reaper are easier or better than the studio software. Now that may be because they don't understand the quality of the kit that we have in the studios, or that might just be familiarity with what they know and they're quite happy carrying on with that. Studio Tech needs upgrading, somebody says. Now, whether or not they mean to Audacity and Reaper, I didn't go into. The studio sound quality was good. Again, extraneous noise we know is an issue for some of our home readers. Some people just don't like the technical stuff. And again, we've got to be there to support those readers. Some readers just want to do the reading and then hand it over to somebody else to sort out. And that's fine, but we've got to be there to support them. So I asked them about their concerns of returning to the office space and the studios. And again, there's going to be no surprises here. It's all about COVID. The main concern is it's not safe. And when pressed on, what do you mean? The main answers were about the ventilation, about enclosed spaces, and that you can't trust other people to follow guidance. Now, we've seen all of those concerns just generally with COVID, so that's why it's no response. But if we're going to get the studios back up and running and being used, those are I would suggest, our priorities. Some people are used just to not going out. I mean, I know I was there at one point. I thought, you know, great, everything can be done from home. Why would you go out again? Then once you start going out, you get back into the swing of it. Some people just don't want to, and we've got to support that. And bless them, we've got one person who's got no concerns about going back to the studio, quite happy to. So again, extremes of opinion. When asked what changes they needed to the office or studio space, again, ventilation, cleaning the space, sanitising the space, having fewer people in the space, and everybody wearing masks. They were the main concerns that people thought, they were the main changes rather, that people thought should happen. And again, we've seen them before, we've seen them throughout lockdown, so we need to address those matters. The other responses that came out from this question was upgrade the recording equipment, which we've already been through. And if I just jump down, personal mic mufflers, that's a really good idea. And I don't know how much that would cost, but it makes sense that if you're speaking into a microphone, that you might not want to share that piece of equipment with the next person or the person that's been in there before. So that's, excuse me, voice is going. So that sounds like a good idea, something that we could look into, would make people feel a bit happier about using the space. Some people want a bigger space, more toilets and more studios. Obviously, we can only work with what we have, but the idea behind that is that you can leave a space unused for a while, so that not everybody's overusing the same space. And again, that's a concern about COVID and picking up germs from other people. And somebody else mentioned we need some ergonomic furniture. And if we're updating the space and there's enough in the budget, or we can find the funding, then why not? What else? Well, I asked everybody that I spoke to about using masks, and 100% agreed that they would use masks within the studio and office space. 100% agreed on using COVID passports if they were in at the time, if they were working, and if we asked them to. 100% of the people asked were agreed to use the cleaning wipes to wipe down equipment, but some very valid points were made. Is it a good idea to have moisture around electrical equipment? And what if somebody moved the settings on the boards? I certainly wouldn't be able to put the settings back if I inadvertently moved one. Some people could, some people wouldn't. So how can we manage that? What can we do about that? We asked people about holding keys for the front doors to get into the studio. Would they be willing to? The idea behind that was that we hope to run some kind of a booking system, as I've previously mentioned. So people could come in and on a booking system, so we'd know exactly how many people are in the studio, so you don't get loads of people in the space at once. You're not having to hang around in the space waiting for someone to finish. It would also help whoever's working in the space out of the actual staff, that they don't have to get up and let people in all the time, which may hold an issue for the person who's doing that. Unfortunately, that didn't go down very well at all with our volunteers, weren't really agreeing to that at all, very concerned about the responsibility involved in that. So we're going to have to rethink that aspect about how we're going to manage people coming in and out. So to sum up, basically we need to carry on with home recording. We need to carry on, if we're going to take our volunteer base with us, we need to carry on with home recording. We need to carry on with supporting them, organising them, having someone for them to go to for advice about recording. But we also need to look at the space, decide the best way forward, how are we going to use that space, what are we going to do to it, to change it, to encourage people to come back in. Are we going to carry on using it in the same way? Are we going to carry on recording in the studio for home reading, or are we going to use a studio space for other things? And these are the sorts of questions that we're going to have to ask and come to a decision on. That's me. Are there any questions? I can't see anybody's face, so I'm going. Can I come out of sharing?
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine. Sorry. Yeah, that was very informative, and as one of the people you phoned and questioned, it was nice to see the results from that.
Good.
So yeah, so does anyone have any questions on that? I don't see any hands raised. Oh, Kevin, sorry, I didn't see your hand there. Yeah. You're muted.
Yeah, thanks. No, I'm not. Thanks, Dan. That is really good, and it looks as though the the right questions were asked, and we got representative views. One really positive thing that I take from that is now we've got choice, right? We don't have to turn up at the studio, but we can. We don't have to work at home, but we can. And that actually, I think, is a message that I think is really quite important to give to all of our volunteers. Yeah, look at all this flexibility you've got there. I, for one, in terms of my own work, I'd love to be right back in the office, but actually thinking hard about it, I'd prefer to be in the office 40% of the time, not 100% of the time. So it's that level of choice there. One slight concern that I would have, and there are people who have more technical knowledge than me that may well be able to advise on it, is the quality of the sound in some of the recordings that we make from home. So we have professional studios and we have people who will produce well from that. My iPhone isn't the best in terms of, for example, to use for recording. It's all right. But when you get an old guy like me with failing hearing, and sometimes the crackles or the muffles and things like that are in there, and we're compromising a little bit there. And I suspect many of our listenership may well have a slight audible impairment there. And all I would say is, because I don't have an answer for it, is it's something we need to bear in mind. And it's probably a question of teamwork on, if something has been done on an old laptop, is there a way that a producer can enhance the quality and the crispness, for example, of the sound there? So that's it, my tuppence worth. Well done, thank you for that. I think it's really useful. It's just the hearing is the slight concern for me.
Mm-hmm.
Amy, one of the things I would maybe suggest is Ronnie's, again, he's gone back. I mean, I don't know, is Ronnie back in the Curtis office? Would it be possible that at our next board meeting that Ronnie could talk to us about the Curtis experience and what's going on there? And that again might, gaining experience from another charity might also, that's obviously got office space, etc., might be beneficial, Ronnie?
Yeah, I'd be up for that. I think I vaguely remember during COVID, I think we spoke about this stuff kind of not in depth, but I'd be happy to kind of discuss what stuff we are following, and because we're an EDC building, they've got sort of stuff nailed to whatever standards. But yeah, whenever you want to. Yeah.
Great.
Great. So we've got a couple of hands up. I've got OD, and I don't know who that is.
That's me.
That's you. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah. Changed my name. Simply, it was a follow-up to Kevin's point that although I take on board what he's saying about you don't get the extraneous noises, unless we have technical people in the studio keeping an eye on things, you get some very bad quality recordings from the studio equipment just the same if people don't do it right. So it's not just about the equipment, it is also about the reader and the support the reader requires to give of their best. Mm-hmm. And some people will probably be actually doing better quality recordings from home because they're aware of extraneous noise and listening for it. Mm-hmm. Then if they were in the studio where they kind of sit back and get too far away from the mic, or they hear a noise from outside, think, oh, that won't have gone through, and don't go back and check. So it is a kind of balancing act there.
Yeah, it's not just the extraneous noise, it is the quality of microphones and stuff like that as well. I take your point, but we just need to be aware of the thing generally.
I mean, on
And
that,
sometimes poorer quality mics don't pick up as much as well. So like you get more background noise maybe on a better quality mic because it's more sensitive.
yeah, I mean, we have provided some readers with laptops. One of the readers I spoke to prefers to use her phone, and she received a laptop and she actually prefers to use her phone. She thinks it's better. Has she got the greatest iPhone that you could buy? Probably, possibly, I don't know. Perhaps it is better than what she was given. So you can't, you know, there are lots of options, and I think we just need to explore them with each reader, perhaps. But that's quite time consuming, which is another reason why we need the support there for them.
Absolutely. So I think unless anyone's got any other comments, I think we should maybe try and move on just because I'm conscious of time. And then the next thing is the Adapt and Thrive improvements to the building. Is there an update on that?
There is, Amy. Again, I will take us through that. And here we go. Hopefully, isn't doing it. You should now be seeing a go forward presentation. And I'll just to make sure I think I've got it there. That's it. Our biggest project at the moment is the Adapt and Thrive programme. You're aware that with Adapt and Thrive we've got £53,522, and basically what has been going on doing that, I've lost my script. As the Community Regeneration Funded project ended in May, we agreed not to employ any additional staff, but to ensure continued employment for current staff members. Improvements need to be made for this to run smoother and for it to be made easier for the ICT officer, Alistair, trained the team in how to use the new 8x8 and then team system, and the improvements need to be made for this to run smoother and for it to be made easier for our volunteer switchboard. Basically, we've got now the 8x8 and the Teams thing working together. That is working successfully. Ian seems to be the most popular person on the phone system. He keeps getting listeners phoning, keeps getting in the sense that it's like 1 or 2 a fortnight will phone. But it's a start. We're making some progress on that. We're trying to get listener involvement, and we can't do that unless we're actually at the end of a phone. But if we're going to make more progress in that, we actually need to figure out how to make the phones work better than they currently are. Now, I wish I could actually find my script. Sorry, let me just. This isn't ideal. I've lost my script. Take it off share for a second. How did I get? Right, bear with me. I'm just going to try and work my way through this. Sorry about this. All right, got it now. Our upper floor tenants currently pay £15 per square foot on average. We wish in the second part of the year, now that we're in the second part of the year, but we're looking to increase the rent to £18 a square foot. We've allowed some leeway in overall funding to allow rentals to find more of a median point between current and hoped for levels. As new tenants are coming in, they're beginning to pay the £18 per square foot rate, and this is without the refurb having started. The gym area, currently this is a very poor return in space, and the facilities manager would instigate how we can change its use or increase our return from its use. They would also look at what resources were needed for this to be achieved. We expect them to sign, not sing, we expect them to sign on the 27th of October to pay £750 per month, but if they don't, they're in my opinion, they're out, and we need to aim to secure cross-cabs who have expressed an interest in the space as a potential new tenant. And in fact, Diane has confirmed with me this afternoon that she's meeting with them tomorrow at 4:30. Currently, a large part of this is done by a tenant in lieu of rental, including car park maintenance, snow clearing, weeding, etc. TCMF, who have been doing this, are currently questioning this, so if they leave, then this would be an additional cost. The project manager will gather and arrange quotes, organise the purchase of new resources, and monitor spending. They will work alongside the facilities manager, who will have a strong say in how the space looks and feels, as it will be the facilities manager who will have the responsibility to increase the revenue generated from the space. The ICT officer has still to commence work on designing a new website to maximise returns for the tenants, enabling, in turn, increased rentals to be charged in the second half of the year. They will instigate the centre providing Wi-Fi throughout the building, thereby reducing costs to tenants and clarifying how the new telecoms could be used to offer a reception service for the building. The facilities manager will be responsible for the design and implementation of the COVID improvements, enabling an easy, clean approach and one-way pedestrian flow around the building. I think this is actually, there we go. Tenants and visitors will be provided with a safer environment and an earlier return to the centre. Improvements will also ensure that once completed, generated revenue will go back to and improve on pre-COVID-19 levels. Now, again, we're actually getting improvements to our income without making the proposed changes, but we'll see where that goes. COVID pedestrian flow and public access improvements. The cost of making our, I'm just again thinking, no, I need to go back to that one. COVID pedestrian flow and public access improvements. The cost of making our building maintenance by introducing a one-way system, with easy clean being the main mantra, to include floor markings and improvements to the upper hallway, fire exit, the kitchen area and toilet flooring. Existing tenants have expressed concerns that the current flooring and decoration is not conducive to it being easily cleaned, thereby causing them and their visitors concern. To allow staff and members of the public to enter one door and exit another, these doors would need to be self-locking. The far end corridor leading to the downstairs is currently open to an ancient kitchen area. We would direct a partition to enable members of the public to walk through, knowing that the partition met fire standards and the stairwell lighting made it suitable for people to use as a main exit. Again, appropriate signage would need to be introduced for people to use the exit regularly. The kitchen units would be replaced to wipe down friendly, presenting a more sterile image for the space. Telecom purchase enables our team to answer inquiries from home without using personal numbers, but the main office number is diverted to phones held in their homes. This will provide the ability for a different person each day to be a receptionist and to divert the calls to best team members. The figure does include 3 years of running costs, as this was the minimum available to get the discounts on offer. The facilities manager and the ICT officer will need computers to work from, but actually what's ended up happening is Morag and I are fulfilling currently those roles. There we go. With Morag's retirement at the end of this year as operations director, we have been preparing by recruiting Diane Cowan to initially job share and then take over the role in a permanent capacity. To achieve this, Diane has been set financial targets as part of her remit, with a clearer job description created. In working on her handover, it became evident that along with a volunteers manual and training zone, there was also a need for an operations manual. Work on this is ongoing. We have recruited a new volunteer through Facebook to undertake a new series of Q Talks, and I'm very grateful to Adam Julians, whose professional name is Jules London, who's been undertaking those interviews, and he's recently started university, so hopefully he'll still be able to continue doing that. We expect to have a blended approach for most of the year, with about half of our reader ambassadors contemplating studio recording. The main challenge that will be that by their very nature, studios are small enclosed spaces with many touch points. We can make certain adaptations and will need to have extra equipment, personal headphones and mics at the very least. Many will continue to record from home, but may consider meeting face to face for a social occasion. Our ambassadors who visited public spaces and leafleted will also have a mix of views and, for example, sharing cars to take banners to a venue. Some may be happy to leaflet in the open air, but not to be in enclosed, potentially busy shopping centres. We will continue to push social media as a good way of selling our service and are confident that we can adapt to whatever the new normal turns out to be. We are very excited about our new Alexa project. COVID-19 forced most TNs to close. Many are unable to resume their analogue recording distribution. We moved to digitised recording and distribution in previous years. There is a need, therefore, for a step change in Scottish talking newspapers. Talking newspapers largely went into hibernation during the pandemic. Many, including the Scottish Committee, are now reporting their intention to close. We need to play our role in saving and rejuvenating the Scottish TN movement. Our experience of recruiting, motivating and developing home-based volunteers with isolation, mental and physical health issues before and during the pandemic equips us well to do this. Our ability to remotely train people to record, edit and upload to digital platforms from home and working with BWBF, our emphasis on online listening platforms, while also working with local resource centres, libraries, etc., makes us the only TN in Scotland able to run the project. Our volunteer-operated virtual phone system enables us to be more accessible to visually impaired people while improving our ability to gather feedback from them. We will need 1 day per week talking newspaper development officer through the project to identify TNs that will need our help, to work with third sector interfaces in the relevant areas to recruit volunteers who will build a dedicated Scottish TN website enabled to support Zoom, Eventbrite, booking systems, training resources and online players that are easily accessible by visually impaired people and therefore sighted people. We will then use the new site to undertake online training sessions and encourage team interaction in their geographic or local newspaper area, along with encouraging online interactions with other newspaper title teams. New volunteers and a new emphasis on visually impaired people becoming the Scottish Committee will lead to content being shaped by their needs. Coon Review is a key player in the development of talking newspaper, remote management, training resources and online audio distribution are saddened that so many partner organisations are struggling. Without our community, the TN movement, to raise awareness, we will fail to attract volunteers and listeners. The September 21 AGM of the Scottish TN Group saw the proposal for the Scottish TN Committee to wind up. Currently struggling, Strathkelvin Talking Newspaper have also intimated that they intend to close in March 2022. This exemplifies just 2 of the TNs across Scotland failing to bounce back after COVID-19 forced TNs to hibernate. I will say I've also now heard, though, that East Kilbride Talking Newspaper is back up and running. They're back in industry use. The Scottish Talking Newspaper movement in a recent telephone survey was shown to be dependent on people 70 plus. For volunteers to be needed to record talking newspapers, Coon Review as a Scottish charity must find a new model for TN management and production, giving volunteers the option to record from home at times that suit them. This year, thanks to the National Lottery Community Fund funding, we are now uniquely placed to revitalise the Scottish TN network through a partnership with BWBF, the Talking Newspaper Federation, Erskine Care Homes and Staff Services for the Blind. We have the tools to distribute across Scotland while getting feedback from listeners. Visually and reading impaired people need to be able to access information, so for that reason, talking newspapers must survive. So that is basically an application that we've currently got into the one of the funding bodies. So again, if we're successful in that application, that will move forward as well. So thank you for listening to that one. Amy, over to you.
Hi, I'm trying to turn my camera back on, but I can't seem to, oh, there it is there, sorry. So yeah, so that was very informative about that. I'm not sure if you have, or are you able to share the slides to review later, just because there's been a lot of information tonight and it might be useful to be able to revisit that.
Yeah. But basically what I'm hoping to do, Amy, is actually edit the beginnings and ends of this and therefore put this up in the Friends group for people to see what we're doing. But yes, anyone that wants the slides and the information, we'll send that out to the team as well.
That would be great. So moving on with the agenda, I think we're getting closer. So the way forward presentation, I think is that kind of what you were covering?
That we're just done. Yep, we put the two together.
So then, sorry, and then appointments or changes to directors and nominations received so far.
Well, basically, mate, unfortunately, Kevin Brawley's not here tonight. But because he had at the last board meeting, he talked about a lady that was interested in marketing, had a marketing background who might be interested. Now, I haven't heard any more from that on that front. But I did phone Companies House today to get some clarity. Now, there is a suggestion that, as we talked about at the last board meeting, that as Mark Hutton hasn't attended any of our board meetings in the recent past, that we encourage Mark to step down. Now, in speaking to Companies House, one of the suggestions that I talked about with them was that Diane joins the board. If Mark steps down, Diane joins the board immediately as a director, and then in the as soon as Morag retires on the 31st of December, we then make Diane the operations director. And that would allow Diane to have a say right now on the board, although very few things go to a vote, but it would mean that if we were having anything happening, she would have a say right now. So we could actually have Diane and Morag on the board at the same time, as if I suspect Mark is willing to step down. But I do think we need to chase Kevin up as well.
And could we then potentially advertise for replacing Mark in the longer term and sort of have it from January? Okay, I'll have a think of it if I know anyone either to get involved.
So would everybody be comfortable with Diane joining the board now if Mark agrees to step down?
Yes.
I'm happy to propose or second the motion or whatever is required.
Now, for this purpose, can Ronnie and Kevin just confirm as well? Yeah, that's okay. Good. Thank you. And Diane, as the irony is, Diane, can you take a note of that decision, right? So we'll contact Companies House either tomorrow or the beginning of next week and get that put in motion. And I'll speak to Mark in the next day or so to sort that one out. Amy, over to you.
If you need a letter or email from myself for Mark, just let me know.
Will do.
That's covered the agenda items that I've got. Has anyone got anything else they'd like to bring up? Otherwise, I'll bring the meeting to a close. Oh, Morag?
Very briefly, and it relates to that previous one, that obviously if Diane's coming on as director, there are certain things we need to sort out about banking. And one of the things we were looking at too was more of a finance committee. Because at the moment, all the banking is done electronically. We haven't signed a check in years, but we did have that we had 4 check signatories, and it could be one of the executive directors and one other director. In other words, Alistair and I couldn't sign a check. It had to be Alistair and other director, or me and other director. It would be very good practice to get back to that. And also, when we had a very weak board, basically, I did the banking, I made up the book, Alistair checked the book, but it was all very internal, and that is also not best practice. So ideally, we're looking for 2 people who would be willing to be check signatories in inverted commas, but also to oversee what is done, to basically authorize the banking to be done and to check the bank statement, the cash book, the bank statement in some fashion agreed, probably only monthly for that bit. But it would be good to move that one forward.
Okay,
Kevin McPhillips is indicating.
Yeah, I'm basically offering to do that periodically, if that is of any help whatsoever. Just another pair of eyes, another separate segregation of duties and stuff.
Does that mean you also be prepared to be one of the non-executive signatories?
Yes, yeah.
Because I think it used to be you had to give to the bank a formal resolution of what you decided at a meeting. Right?
So we're doing that now. Yeah.
So that would be, if that's okay with you, if we still need to do that, that would be one.
Yeah, I would expect they still need to see a record of that. So yeah.
And Amy's indicating there as well, Morag.
So that would be excellent. That would be the chair, the vice chair, who are not executive, and the 2 executive directors that are going to be.
I would just possibly need a little bit of training because I've never done a role like that. But I'd be happy to learn.
It would basically be, Amy, that we would have a finance meeting at which one of you would be asked to make sure you attended, that when if we were making financial decisions or spending money or whatever, you were available for a Zoom call or a Teams call to make that sort of decision. Okay. So that's Dan's taking a note of that as well. Thank you, Dan. Anything else, Amy?
I think that's.
Well, Kevin's indicating.
Oh, sorry, Kevin.
Yeah. I'm not entirely sure whether I've got my timing quite right on this, but given it's the AGM, I'll chance my arm. And I would quite like to record a note or a vote of thanks to Morag for the many years that she has put in and the determination with which she has followed her role, and the humour which she has used to cajole and keep people on side and going on this. So yeah, I'd just like to propose that at this stage. I'm sure there'll be opportunities to do another one at some stage as well.
Thank you.
I second that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Morag, you know how we feel about you. So I think that's the best way for it. Very positively.
I'm just worried that now he doesn't have a daytime wife anymore. He's going to expect me to take that role back. So
you and I can meet for a pint at some point.
Yes, I'm a little bit worried about that.
Well, I have to say to you, one of the real reasons that you both were the daytime wife and the nighttime wife was at the time when you first came on the scene, Morag, you had a perm, as did Karen.
I am old enough to be Karen's mammy, so that's not fair.
I deny.
I can assure you, Karen, that I am leaving you in very competent hands. Diane can hold her own. Maybe not in quite such a determined manner as me, but she definitely has the humour, and she probably has a much kinder approach. And if you want somebody to be really nice and diplomatic, Ian's there as well.
There we go.
I'm leaving you in perfect
but she needs a perm.
No. Nobody ever needs a perm again. No, that's right.
Down to PD Annie's to get the perm.
As long as Diane knows that that's part of the role she's taking on.
Again, but we are planning some fun and games towards December, which we won't say any more about just now. So there is something in there will be a toodaloo for new come December. So we'll take it from there, Amy.
Which is
that sounds great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw something today about 60 days to Christmas or something.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it? Oh.
Okay, Amy.
All right. Okay. Thank you, everyone. And Karen, I hope that was the dog you were telling off, and not anyone else in the house.
It was. I apologise if I was unmuted there. Yes, I was telling the dog he was a bad boy to sit down. Yes.
Ronnie was really worried there.
Karen, do you want to give your good news, by the way?
It's still nothing each. Scotland against Sweden on the telly, which I have not been paying any attention to. That's the best news.
It was the referee you were talking to then, not the dog.
Who's it you're going to be working with from mid-November?
I've just been employed by SCVO to work from their Glasgow office.
Well, I am hoping you make huge changes.
Well, I'm not guaranteeing. I'm not guaranteeing, but I think they want to make changes, so I think I'll be part of that. Yes.
What's the official job title then, Karen?
Official job title is just customer service advisor, which I say just. It's actually it's the first point of contact for people who want any information, but they're going to try and have a kind of a one contact hub, so that all the questions come into one place, and then we filter them out to the right people.
I thought for a minute when you tell me they were going to talk to each other.
Well, yeah, that's
good.
One of the reasons they said that they wanted me in particular was my skill set and working strategically. So that's me starting middle of November sometime, I think.
So Ronnie, by the sound of it, might be in touch.
Oh, aye. I've been name dropping. Aye.
Two best friends, Ronnie.
Yeah.
Me again.
The other one that I'm desperate to know, because I'm nosy, is Ronnie, where are you?
I've been sent up to the loft. I'm back at my parents' house for the moment. So got a new house. It's in the post. We'll say it's half built in Kirkintilloch, so moving out to Kirkintilloch, round the corner for the office, funny enough. Not that in any way that influenced my decision to be moving where I'm moving to, but it's a new built house, so I think it's sitting at about 50%, so between February and April, they say. But until then, the dog's so happy to see me. My mum got one of the air fryers, brilliant. Aye, so and they've got Sky TV as well.
And a lot to put you in when they're fed up looking at you.
No, it's not heating up here. Right? Bloody freezing, but
behave when you're going to the loft.
So
that's where I am.
The Kirky Mafia then, Ronnie, is going to be increased, because that's Ian, Diane, yourself. So basically, you lot can all meet for what's it? The Antonine, Ian? What's the pub that's used to be? It's
now called the Lion and Star.
Right, so you'll be round the Lion and Star, the three of you.
So all board meetings will be taking place in Lion and Star. Motion that. Put that in the notes.
They'll have all their COVID stuff in place, and you'll only need to wear a mask when you're moving about. So it sounds like a great place to meet.
Good luck to everybody. Thank you for everybody coming tonight.
See you soon.
Nice meeting you, Dan.
Nice to see everyone. Bye.
See you again.